1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2.
No, uzokwenza ama-slides awu-3 and maseyaphuma maseyawakhanyisa manje.
But angithi uzoqala ukhuluma wena.
Yeah, but ngikhuluma kumnyama. Noma ukhuluma okay, futhi wami, futhi sicela ukube wena usi-operate-elayo ama-lights. Umthithi uzokutshena ukuthi akabe dark, abe njani. Sengibise umthithi we-PowerPoint. Leroy. Because I'll be next to you. Just be another. Sorry? While you are still busy with that. Okay, let's just start. Baba, we'll be starting, eh? Let me start while he's still busy. I'm saying let me start while he's still busy. Okay. Wanda. 1, 2. 1, 2. Okay. No, thanks. Three slides after the children. 3 slides for the children. The man is here, but before I introduce him, I'm a person who don't have table manners, and so you have to forgive me, but I'll try. Let me greet everyone who is here, and I would like to say we are truly humbled that you sacrifice your time to be in this space where you are going to be depressed and feel hopeless, and others will be saying, tomorrow I'm leaving this country. When you live here. But that's not our primary objective. Our primary objective for us to be here tonight is to see the extent of the catastrophe that currently is prevailing in our country and how zombified we are not to confront this catastrophe. Possible, those who crafted this catastrophe were fully aware of the people that they were dealing with, that they were dealing with people, or they are dealing with people who are docile. And so what Zupera is trying to do, or what we have been trying to do, is to conscientize people about the issues that are facing our country. And what is very interesting tonight, I see faces that have been in this journey, I don't know for how long. Gillian is there. Thanks that you are here. She has been with us for the past 10, 15 years. Yeah. And we have been discussing these things. She knows very well. But unfortunately, the more we discuss, the others are digging the grave for us. You know? And so, in a way, we've submerged in this hollow grave. And unfortunately, we are dragging our kids with us to this grave. And when we rise for our own selfish issues, but not the issues that bind us all. That's the sad part. But interestingly today, or tonight, we have the action essay is here. Thanks for coming. We have Bob Rogers there at the back from the DA. Thanks for coming. The ANC also gave me names of people who, I'm not sure they are here or there. Thanks also for coming. And who else? You are from? I've already acknowledged you. Yes, this one? Yes, from the Black Lawyers Association. And so, what is very interesting, we have people who have been excavating or who have been digging this grave for us. They are here in this room. And so it will be very interesting also for them to see the damage that they've done to us. But interestingly, they've dragged also the DA, they are part of them now. And the Action SA, they are part of them now. And they are a bigger club. You see, and so interestingly that we have the political elites here, who I guess, Babu Mbeki, you will be able to engage with them, and they will have answers. And we will be waiting for those answers as well. And I would like the audience not to be scared of them. You have to be frank, you see? And so Zupera is a safe space. It's where frankness and honesty we always promote. And most importantly, let me say again, thank you for being here. And surely, this is a journey for something great, I can assure you. I called Rob Hezoff last time. I was insulted by both blacks and whites. Today, I'm with Moeletsi. I've received also messages from, but they want me to convey these messages to him, but I'm not going to do that. Like they were wanting me to convey the messages to Rob. I don't do those things, you know. I'm not a conveyor belt. The discussion tonight is about, as I've said, we are no longer going to do analysis. We know the problems that we have. We know that we can, at the end of the day, even able to meet our debit orders. You know, we know that our economy is in serious shambles. So as our psyche and our emotions. But tonight, we are going to find solution out of this. And so it's not going to be about crying over the splitted milk or whatever, but we'll be discussing solutions. And so everyone will be allowed to speak. This is a political space, a safe space. You have to speak your mind. And so I think, but it's not a group counseling session, you know. You must not cry. It's not a group counseling session. You have to speak your mind. And so I would like to introduce Ubaba Moeletsi Mbeki. What is very interesting is very brutal. Is one of the few people, the first people post-apartheid who were censored by the South African media. Sure, you remember that. But interestingly, you know who censored him? His own brother. You see, and so that's how truthful he is. I'm not sure if you understand me. That's how truthful he is. To an extent that the love that he's having for this country matters most, or matters more than the love for his brother. And so we have a true patriot, as someone who has been an outcast, someone who's not loved by many, but in their corners they admire him. Unfortunately, when they are alone, they admire him, but when they are in numbers, in groups, they don't like him. But when a person drives alone, going home, he will always say, Moeletsi is one of the brilliant person. And so, let me not waste a lot of time. I'll give him the opportunity to do what he's here for. Awesome. How are you? Thanks.
Are we ready? Yes. Thank you, Tolan. Good afternoon or evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very sorry we were late. There is so much traffic in Durban, so I'm encouraged that the Durban economy at least is moving. I don't know in which direction, but at least it's moving. So this is encouraging for me. South Africa actually has one problem. And please don't listen to Donald Trump. We have one problem. Our problem is the economy. That is the only problem that we have in this country. And why is our economy a problem? This is what I'm trying to address today. And we don't have, though, an economic solution. South Africa's solution to our economy is not an economic solution. It is a political solution, because that is what is an obstacle to the performance of our economy. It's not what the economists will tell you. What the problem is with our economy is the political blockage to the performance of our economy, to the performance of our businesses. You may have noticed in the past few days, there has been a war between the Minerals Council, the old Chamber of Mines. There's been a war between the Minerals Council and the Minister of Mines, Gwede Mantashe. Now, the mining industry accounts for 60% of South Africa's exports. So the cars that we all came in here, most of them have components that are imported from this country. And to pay for those components, to pay for that petrol, we have to export something. And our single biggest export are the minerals. Now, the Minister of Mines, instead of working with the mining companies, he is at war against the mining companies. So, and that affects everybody in this country. So the question is, I ask myself, and I think we all should ask yourselves, is why is the Minister of Mines fighting the mining industry instead of working with the mining industry so that it exports more and more? Because all the medicines, and I'm sure most of us in this room take one medicine or another, whether it's an aspirin or a pacemaker in the case of the rich and old who are having heart problems. You can't get your pacemaker if you don't export the minerals, because we have to pay for the pacemaker and we have to pay for the medicines that we use in this country. So why is the Minister of Mines, instead of cooperating with the mining industry, why is he fighting against the mining industry? One of the most important outcomes of democracy in South Africa, we all wanted democracy, but one of the most important outcomes of democracy is that it transferred political power from the people who owned property, who owned productive assets. It transferred political power from that group to the people who don't own assets, who don't own productive assets. That is what happened on the 28th of April, 1994. Before the 28th of April, 1994, political power in South Africa rested with property owners, the owners of the mines, the owners of the banks, the owners of the supermarkets, and so on. They followed the National Party, essentially, but they were the owners of property. What happened on the 28th of April, 1994, a new ruler came up, which was the African middle class, represented by the ANC, and they didn't own property. And that is a very important aspect of South Africa today that you have to understand. If you don't understand that, then you will never know, you will never understand why we're having the problems in our economy that we are sitting with. Non-property owners, let me start with the property owners. Property owners make their livelihood from profits. They live off the profits of their property. Whether it's a shop, whether it's a bank, whether it's a mine, they make their livelihood from profits. If they control the state and they are the rulers, they use the state to make their businesses profitable. They don't live off the state. They use the state to make their businesses profitable. South Africa is a very good example of this model. South Africa before the 27th of April, 1994. I'm not saying it's desirable or undesirable. I'm just describing what happened. Before the 27th of April, the people who ruled the country lived off their private property. They did not live off the taxes of the state. They didn't live off state revenues. What they did with their control of the state was to create, for example, the railway network, which facilitated or enabled them to be able to move their maize from the farm to the urban centers, to move their minerals from the mine to Richards Bay. But they didn't live off the state assets. they use the state assets to make their businesses profitable. The new rulers of South Africa, they don't have those assets. They don't have they don't have land, they don't have mines, they don't have banks, they don't have shops. So what do they live off? They live off the state. And where's our friend here? He has disappeared. They live off the state. This is an illustration of what is happening to the salaries of the public sector in South Africa compared to similar countries. In fact, compared to the whole world. South Africa, the pay of general government employees is more than 14% of gross domestic product. This was done by OECD in 2015. Similar countries to South Africa at the level of development of South Africa, like Colombia, Indonesia, Chile, their civil service, their public service is 6% of GDP. So what we have in South Africa, in fact, the IMF revised these figures. Today, this is now up there at 17% of gross domestic product. 17% of South Africa's gross domestic product goes into paying the salaries of the public service. So now, these are the developed countries, and they are the ones who prepared this graph. This is where America is, this is where England is, that's where Germany is, France. Only 10% of their GDP goes into paying the public service. We are sitting with 17% of our gross domestic product going to pay the public service in South Africa. What's the consequence of that? The consequence of that is that you tax your production side of the economy and you move its profit into the public sector and you distribute that as salaries to state employees. So we have the highest paid civil service in the world in South Africa. And the damage that is doing to our economy is enormous. Last week, the government announced a growth rate of 0.1% of the economy. Why are we getting 0.1% growth? Because we don't have the money to invest in building new factories, creating more jobs, building more mines, and so on. Because we're putting our profits that our companies generate, we're putting them into the salaries of the public sector. Can we move to the next one? Yeah, that's fine. Now, this is what South African society looks like. There is no society like this anywhere in the world. We have what is called by Stats SA underclass and unemployed. They make up nearly 50% of the economically active population of South Africa. There is no such an economy in the world except in South Africa. But what this is telling you, on one side, we're having a public sector that is growing and being highly paid, and at the bottom, we have the huge population that is unemployed, poor, and getting poorer. And this is the economic problem of South Africa. That is its economic. But where does this come from? it comes from who controls political power. The political elite, which, as I pointed out, is the African middle class professionals. They are the political elite. That's what democracy has put into power, and we can discuss how that happened, but that's who it put into power. They are literally milking the whole economy to pay themselves fabulous salaries. The Department of Finance a year or so ago revealed that more than 55,000 public sector employees, including politicians and ministers, more than 55,000 of them earn more than R1 million a year. Now, there aren't many businesses that are profitable that give a livelihood to one individual of R1 million a year. That is what is happening. So our problem is who controls political power. It's not the economy. Many people tell you it's the economy. No, it's who controls political power. The controllers of political power use their political power to enrich themselves through the public service. I heard there are some politicians here. You know, just to show you how wonderful it is to be a politician in South Africa. If you walk into the parliament, into the national parliament, you walk in there and fall asleep, which many of them do, you earn 1.2 million rands. Without doing anything, just walking in, you earn 1.2 million rands in the national parliament. But what is the consequence of that is what you see there. One of the consequences of that is that our economy is unable. Where are we? It keeps running away, this thing. Okay, thank you. Don't run away now. What this makes possible is that we are unable as an economy to provide jobs for half of our working age population. So what do? We have to transfer more resources, not only to the highly paid public servants, but to this population which has no means of livelihood, of earning their jobs for themselves, of making their livelihood for themselves. The consequence of that is the frozen economy that we are sitting with in South Africa. The South African economy for the past 15 years has been completely frozen. But when you have such a large population that's not working, then that's a recipe for disaster. And many of these non-working people are young people under the age of 35. So you are really sitting on a time bomb. So that is, okay, let's move to the next one. Yeah. Now, this is a SWOT analysis, if you wish, of South Africa, which explains to you what the consequence of having rulers who don't own assets of their own. If you look at our society, we have what I call the business elite, who are the owners of business in South Africa. These owners of business in South Africa employ 75% of all people who work in this country. They control most of the productive assets of South Africa, the banks, the shopping malls, you name it. And they control most of the skilled management of South Africa. You find them in the private sector that is owned by the business elite. However, they have a very key weakness. Their weakness is that they have no control of the government. Why? Government is controlled by the political elite, which is now separate, as I pointed out. So the business elite in South Africa suffers from this vulnerability. If you don't have political power, your assets can be seized by the guy who has political power. I'm sure you have heard of expropriation without compensation. Many people, the government will tell you, the ANC will tell you, no, this is not serious. This is something for fun, I guess, in the eyes of the politicians. But if you own an asset, which those people do, and you have a threat of your assets being seized without compensation, what will you do? What you do is you don't invest. You invest as little as possible, just to keep your business ticking. So the way in which democracy has distributed political power in this country has created this mass problem for our economy and for our country. This is not an economic problem, it's a political problem. Secondly, if they don't seize your assets, they can just tax it because they control the state and they decide on who to tax, what to tax, at what rate to tax. I saw an article today, actually, which is estimating that the middle class in South Africa, where are you going? That the middle class, the effective tax rate for the middle class in South Africa, yeah, there you are, is 67%. If you take in the private services that you have to pay for in your private schooling, your private health, your private security, and so on. That is the effective tax rate that you are paying in this country. There's a calculation that somebody did a couple of days ago, and this was released. So if you're going to be taxed at 63%, then you have nothing to invest back to build your assets, which in reality are assets of the country. Because your economic surplus is being taken away by the public sector to be consumed by the public sector. And the South African public sector is arguably one of the most inefficient public sectors. If you look at our municipalities, a friend of mine nearly died a few months ago by being poisoned by E. coli from Durban beaches. And that is the failure of these highly paid municipal employees, of these highly paid mayors, so-called executive mayors. That is the consequence of that. So that is one problem that we are sitting with as business in this country and as an economy of South Africa. We now have a political elite, which is what democracy gave us, and to a large extent, the political elite is made up of the African middle class. I heard Kolani reeling away the names of the political parties that are here. I think the only one that is not primarily African is probably the DA. But most of the others are part of this political elite that we are sitting with in South Africa. Of course, the ANC is the dominant part of the political elite. Now, what is the political elite's strength? They control the state and they manage government revenues. So you are having a community that owns nothing itself, but it is managing, at the last count, 2 trillion rands, which is the revenue that it collects from the taxpayer. 2 trillion rands. And how do they spend that 2 trillion rands? There are 2 items that account for 84% of the expenditure of that 2 trillion rands. Item number 1 is the public sector salaries. Item number 2 is debt service. So they borrow the money, but the money they borrow cannot pay for itself. So 2 items swallow 84% of the revenue that is collected, which means the hospitals are not maintained, the roads are not maintained, the water supply is not properly managed, and so on and so forth. You can reel this off. So, but this group is very vulnerable because for it to stay a political elite, it depends on the vote of the underclass. The underclass, as we saw, is 50% of our adult population. What is now happening is that the underclass is realizing that the promises that they have been given are never intended to be fulfilled. So they've stopped voting. Literally stopped voting. Of the people eligible to vote in South Africa, 60% of the people eligible to vote in the last elections just stayed at home and didn't vote. So this democracy that we have is literally caving in on its own because of the mismanagement of the economy by the political elite in this country. I won't go into the detail with all this. It's a very interesting process to explain how our economy works, how our society works, why it works and why it doesn't work. This is explained in there, but I don't think we have the time to go through it. So what is the solution to this? As I pointed out, political power in South Africa is in the hands of the non-property owning African middle class. That's who holds political power. Today, they are being propped up by a new friend of theirs, which is the English-speaking white middle class who control the Democratic Alliance. So this is now a new partnership of this political elite, but they're both middle-class parties. So the message should be quite clear. We have to change who rules South Africa. As long as South Africa is ruled by the non-property owners, they are, through their consumption and their taxing of the economy, they are destroying the economy of South Africa. And just to show you, where's my friend? Can you come back? Just to show you what destroying the economy of South Africa means. No, the next one. Yeah, this one. Now you'll have to dim your lights here. Yeah. How the South African economy is being destroyed by the people who rule this country is shown by what is called the Human Capital Index. This index, it's a jungle of figures, is produced by the World Bank. What the Human Capital Index measures, according to the World Bank, is an annual measurement prepared by the World Bank. Human Capital Index measures which countries are best in mobilizing their human capital, the economic and professional potential of the citizens. The top country is Singapore. Many people think that because Singapore is not democratic, that's what makes it work. That's not what makes it work. What makes Singapore work is its human capital. Number 2 is Hong Kong. Number 3 is Japan. Number 4 is Korea. And number 5 is Canada. Those are the top users of their own human capital to run their economies, to manage their society. South Africa is here, number 132. Above South Africa, other African countries that are above us are, the first one is Mauritius. Where is our friend? Can you just move this slightly up because it's, yeah. Now, in the rankings in Africa, number 1 is Mauritius. Number 2 is Kenya. Then Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, Egypt, Gabon, Ghana, Namibia, and then South Africa. So in terms of our development and our use of our human capital, we are number 132 in the world. Now, at 132 in the world, you cannot build modern industry. And South Africa is stuck. That's why we're having 60% of our exports coming from mines. It's because we are unable to build manufacturing, modern manufacturing industry that's globally competitive. If you go to the car park out here, you will find brand new cars coming from Korea. Why are there brand new cars from Korea in South Africa? That's the reason. It's because Korea invests in its human resources. It invests in their housing, in their healthcare. The life expectancy of those top 5 countries there is nearly 80. The life expectancy of South Africa is 61. That's what investing in your human capital entails. So, the rule of these elites is very destructive of our society and is very destructive of our economy. Can we just move one more? Yeah. Now, having seen where we are in terms of our human capital, this shows you what has happened to the GDP of Korea compared to South Africa. In 1950, Korea had a war between communist North Korea and non-communist South Korea. South Africa sent 800 soldiers to fight on the side of the South. 38 of them, I think, were killed in that war in Korea. And South African economy was better than the Korean economy after that war. Today, Korean economy is many times the size of the South African economy is about $400 billion. The Korean economy is somewhere near to 400 billion US dollars, more than $1 trillion US dollars. And you can see what happened. What happened, this is what your Bantu education does for you. If you don't educate your population, Korea puts huge investment in its population and its economy is up there. South Africa, look at where its economy is sitting. So that, Mr. Chairman, is the message. The message is that we cannot change these problems that we're sitting with as long as political power is only in the hands of the middle class in South Africa, the non-property owning middle class. We have to bring into the political system the owners of capital. Without the owners of capital, our economy is going to die a slow death from lack of investment and for being overtaxed to finance this hugely bloated and overpaid public sector. I think I should stop there for the discussion. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Should I go here? Oh, you can go now.
Sure. Thanks. You sound like a brutal capitalist, Surely, if you say, Babam, the owners of property are the ones who are supposed to, you'll correct me, are the ones who are supposed to lead. And now we're facing the expropriation. It's an act. It's no longer a bill, it's an act. How do you balance that? Because those who are in power are those who don't own the property. But those who own the property currently are fearing the issue of this act, its implications. And you talk about investment. That will mean those who own the property, under the threat of this bill, they will rather not invest in this country. And those who have property, they will rather sell before the doomsday arrives. That's what you are saying?
Yeah. I think I'm still on. What is happening to South Africa? Because of the threat that is sitting over the owners of property, the threat of expropriation, of exploitative tax system, and then having to finance half of the population that's not working. What is happening is that they're keeping their money in the bank, the balance of the money that they have. Because if you invest it, it can be expropriated. So you invest as little as possible. So it was revealed a few weeks ago that South African private sector is sitting in its current accounts on R1 trillion, which is just sitting in the bank, not being invested. But how are you going to invest it if the Minister of Mines is saying, if you invest it, I take half of it and pocket it for my BE friends? So that is why they won't invest. But as I pointed out, that's a recipe for disaster for all of us in South Africa, because we face with this hugely unstable society because of the massive unemployment and the massive poverty that we're sitting with. Now, you're asking, what is the compromise? Well, there is no compromise. You either develop your economy or you don't develop your economy. We have to bring down the standard of living of the public sector employees. And we have to dilute the power of the property-less political elite. That has to be diluted with the power of the workers, the power of the poor, and the power of the capitalists. They have to dilute the power of the middle class that is now dominant in our political system. I don't know if I've answered your question.
Look, taking the cue from what has been happening in other African countries, as well as in the South American countries, we know that South Africa also is on the edge of copying the similar strategy, that when the liberation movement vacates power, they will rather pull everyone down. They are like acting like Samson, to say, I am the one who's holding this pillar. And if you remove me from this pillar, and then everything is going to go down. As I've said even the last time, the last kick of a dying animal is always vicious, An animal do not want to go alone. And so how can we prevent that deadly situation that we are currently facing?
Well, you have to be you have to, the property owners, let me say, have to intervene in the political system and become political participants. This is one of the problems we have in South Africa, is that the owners of capital only act when we're on the edge of the precipice. If you look at our history, there has really only been 2 occasions when business has intervened politically in this country. One was in 1896 with the Jameson raid, because the Kruger government in the Transvaal was on the verge of destroying the gold mining industry. So the mining companies mobilized an insurrection against the Kruger regime. And that ultimately culminated in the Anglo-Boer War, where the British government came to the side of the mining companies and removed the Kruger regime themselves. That was one time. The other time was in 1985, after the creation of COSATU, the creation of UDF, the uprising in the 80s against the tricameral parliament. Then the country was on the verge of explosion. Then the chairman of Anglo-American Corporation, a man called Gavin Rayleigh, organized a delegation of other CEOs and flew to Zambia to go and negotiate with the ANC what the future economy of South Africa should look like. And that became a template of the negotiations which ultimately led to our new constitution. But the private sector acts when we are absolutely on the verge of collapse, when the society is on the verge of collapse. Now, that is a very risky way of operating, because you could just miss it by a day and the collapse happens. So we need more active political activity from the owners of capital in South Africa. Because without their participation, as I showed, they control most of the skilled labor force in this country. Without their labor force, without their management skills, we can't have golf courses like this one. If you give it to the state, we all know what happens. So that's why they have to be involved in politics.
Sure. Okay, I'll come. And so what I will do, because I don't want to be a dictator and dominate the discussion, is about you guys. We will start with about 5 questions. Let's start with 5 questions. After that is going to be discussions. Can we have 5 questions? Please, you are a journalist. Let us give others, if you don't mind. 5 questions.
Unconstitutional.
They've censored me, and so I'm paying back. And so we'll have 5 questions, and then after that we have discussions for 20 minutes. And so only questions for now. Where are you having a question? Okay, is 1, 2? Okay.
Thank you, Xolani. Hi, good evening, Mr. Mbeki. An absolute honor to meet you. I met you many years ago at the Hilton Hotel in Pietermaritzburg, and was absolutely bowled away by your intelligence, and it's very nice to meet someone that I consider myself being like-minded, politically aware, and also a proudly South African person. Myself and my team are here. We are from St. Gallen. We are a commodities trading house in Pietermaritzburg. We deal in agricultural commodities. We import and both export to Middle East and Far East Asia. Part of my giving back, or trying to make South Africa better is that we fund black emerging farmers from the Eastern Cape, from Moeletsi down all the way to basically down to Queenstown, and right the way through to Nsolo and all the areas. Myself and my brother are very much on the ground, and we provide soft loans in terms of inputs. My brother's the farmer, so he provides mentorship. And one of the challenges we've experienced with obviously being down in the Eastern Cape is not so much a resource-based one, is that of land ownership. That redistribution has taken place, in a lot of cases, very commercially viable farms. For example, we've got a specific farmer in Moeletsi who's been given a 900-hectare dairy farm. He doesn't have the commercial resources to now farm this farm, so he farms on 20 hectares of it, he farms maize. Part of the reason that he cannot acquire finance is because the government does not give a title deed to this man. So they are land custodians, not land owners. So we've taken land from commercially viable farmers. They've been paid out for it up until this point. I mean, nothing has changed in terms of redistribution as yet. We don't have any examples of it yet, but they've taken commercially viable land and now given it to a land custodian who cannot access finance because they do not own the land. So a bank will take a look at it and say, okay, cool, we'll give you X amounts of million because we can take the title deeds for the land. Now, my question to you is, firstly, why has that happened? And secondly, how do we circumvent this and give these people a title deed or something to go on, knowing which a lot of them are inexperienced farmers, but some of them are from rural backgrounds and have rural experience in terms of farming. So it's going to be hit and miss. But how do we circumvent governments in this sense and say, guys, you know what, we've given you custodianship of the land. You are a farmer that's now proven yourself. Let's give you the ownership of the land so that these guys can access finance. Yeah, that is my question. Thanks, Kolani.
I'll give you an opportunity.
Thank you, Kalani. Daryl Johnston, Mr. Mbeki, thank you very much.
No compensation.
Many years ago, and this will give it away, on Jenny Chris Williams' show on 702, you eloquently and succinctly explained the reluctance of the governing party to educate their electorate because of the impact that would have, and contrasted it with what the opposition, the level of education of the opposition electorate. And your second last slide, I think, is testament to exactly what's happened, and the chasm that we see between the examples of South Africa and South Korea, not just the difference, but in the later years where it's actually diverging. The implications of that in terms of education and the generational time period that takes and the lag, and possibly even multi-generational, what is that impact? What are we looking at as a society in terms of closing that gap, and how is that going? How long is that going to take us to get where we need to be to start turning the corner? Thank you.
Good evening, colleagues. My name is Musi Sondlela. I reside in a nearby village called Wangolosi. This is Hillcrest, or if you like, you call it Waterfall. At some stage, this whole area up to Pinetown was under my great-grandfather's rule, Nkosi Mkhize. The young cousin of mine, Nkosi Mkhize, is still here, still residing outside of this place. His name is Dondo Mkhize, is my cousin. Our great-grandfather owned all this place up to Pinetown. So this is my place, but it's no longer my place. So when it comes to Tatumpe, when it comes to the issue of property ownership in South Africa, that issue has not been tackled, and it is that critical time bomb Xolani we are sitting on is the issue of property ownership. Because the land in South Africa was taken from the black owners at a gunpoint to the hands of the white owners that you call white property owners. I didn't know that you are a diplomat. I only knew you as an analyst. But you are a diplomat as well, because those were the white crooks in 1994 who negotiated with our fellow brothers who we didn't know that were black crooks. When they got power, they forgot about the rest of the majority and they left the table with what was sufficient for them. And even today, after 30 years, our own black brothers have forgotten about us. Many of the white people who reside here, Hillcrest, Kloof, Waterfall, they go down to our village, Kwangolosi, in a dam. There is a dam there. That is part of the dam, 60% there, comes from our land, from our chieftainship. They go there, white people. And I was having a meeting with my fellow brothers, Kwangolosi, and I said to them, if for a month, you all villagers here, we can be removed and be taken to Kloof or Hillcrest and allow white people to go down to the village. Imagine what will happen. Imagine what will, for a month. Hillcrest will look like the village and the village will look like Hillcrest. I'm telling you, if white people, for 1 month, all of them, Waterfall, Hillcrest, up to Kloof, can be taken to my village, Kwangolosi. As you go down with your bikes and everything, if you can go down there and stay there, our village will be beautiful within a month. And what will happen to Hillcrest, you will see for yourself. Why Tatumpeg? Before I take a lot of the time, why Tatumpeg? It's because there was no truth in the transition in 1994. White people, in their lives, from ECD up to corporate level, the amount of money that was spent on investment on their skill. I wish your capital index screen, it had reflected or compared that South Africa that is below Ghana and Mauritius. If there was a comparison that says without black, with black. South Africa without blacks is Australia. And South Africa with black people, us, is number 120. That's why. The amount of money was invested in white people, even today, has not been done, Xolani. So you and I, Xolani, will die poor. Rest assured about that. You will never be rich, my brother. I grew up with you in Claremont. We were young. We threw stones to those hippos when we were led by Baba Achikumet, you and me. You were a little bit younger, but we taught you how to throw stones. And we did that. That was the only investment that our liberation movement did to us, to throw stones at white people. Now it's going to be done by the next generation, my kids and your kids.
Expropriation is an act now, and so you can negotiate.
By who?
No. You'll get a place here at Cotswold. Don't stress.
Thanks, Xolani. My name is Mimashita, is my surname. I'm from Limpopo. I don't own means of production, but I was previously part of the ruling elite. Before I transformed into entrepreneurship, which still doesn't own means of production. I'm still part of the working poor. Mr. Mbeki, I think there are realities, if you travel the world, that you see that sometimes there's a conversation we do not have that for some countries to prosper, you need a caring dictator. And the United Arab Emirates, it's one of them, where people think that the only country in the UAE is Dubai, but there are other 7 or so Emirates where you have got a caring dictator. We have seen how he has even treated his own family and kids and so forth. We have seen that with Traore. Nothing democratic there, but a caring dictator. I want to argue that Singapore was probably having a heavy-handed approach, which might have made the population to be active because they knew what's coming if they do not. And I've made a conclusion that I think one of the things that have been sold globally, probably by the West, is how unworkable is democracy. And I think one of the most delaying of progress in many parts of the world is democracy. And I like giving this example. When the ruler of the UAE died, within 7 days they went to meet as brothers, and they came back and said, we've agreed as brothers that this one is going to be the new ruler. God forbid, let Cyril Ramaphosa die tomorrow. One, there must be a campaign that costs us millions to replace that president with an interim president, and. I would not want to go into that process. So we might need to relook into the issue of democracy as a system and how it helps. And the question I want to ask is that were we really fair and honest, in light of what the gentleman here was saying, in trying to reconcile all the races you have mentioned in historical terms? Because the one thing you are not raising, which was possibly not your focus, is that 49% unemployment is probably 95% black. Not undermining all other races, but that is the reality. How do we reconcile those contradictions? Because it is those contradictions that are historic, that might be as a result of the untruth, rushed reconciliation we have. And I think if we take it that way, understanding that we must also start imagining the future without an ANC ruling government, because that's the reality. How do you see that as a safe passage as well? I'll leave it there. I think we'll have a discussion. Thanks.
A future without the ANC is quite scary, ne? It's not. Okay.
Good evening, Babu Mbeki, and thank you very much for the address. My name is Tabani Zulu, and my question is probably born more of fear than anything else. I would like to say I agree with just about everything you said in your address. But I have two questions, and as I've indicated, they're born out of fear. One is, how do you create an environment where the power, the political power and the economic power are centralized when we know where the economic power comes from, and when the majority of black people are coming from an era of apartheid? Best put, how can black people be reasonably assured that when the political power moves to where the economic power, and I would assume the economic power is centralized in white hands, how can you convince a black person that when the political power moves to economic power, we're not going to go back as a country to how the political power, economic power was used under apartheid? My next question is more an economic question. How do you widen the base of economic power in South Africa so that you can have a lot more economic participants than you currently do? How can you take well, maybe take is a bad word, but how can you transform the current economic structure of our country so that it spreads across all race groups, especially those that are previously disempowered, without threatening the current economic base, and make sure that you have a lot more economic participants in our country that can then explode and expand our economy? Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is colleague Zobi. Tabani, I thank you very much for your comment. Maybe it enlightens me a bit. I differ with what Uzizi have said, Mr. Mbeki. And maybe you want to question the issue of the ownership, or what you call property ownership. Maybe we need to be explicit about the word property ownership. We have a situation of we're dealing with two thieves, the so-called property ownerships, or previously property ownership, property owners, and which is possibly a neoliberal approach that you are defining with the current situation. And at some stage, somebody has to defend the ANC. And I'm prepared to say, at this moment, for the past time, Zubera and with his previous speakers have been bashing the ANC. And I'm a bit concerned that we're in a situation where we have no solution, we have no ideas, we have data that is being manipulated, and at this stage, everything that goes wrong is the ANC. I could accept that there's a lot of things going bad and wrong from the ANC. I've accepted that. But my question is, we've got a neighbor, the Western Cape. The same problems that are faced by the other provinces in the country are happening in the ANC, but in the Western Cape, they're happening under the leadership of the DA. There's no difference. So you're dealing with, maybe I have to be explicit, you have the white leadership and the black leadership. The difference, there's no difference. And to echo what Tabani has said, I'm very uncomfortable to say you transfer power back to the very same abuser who sits with the same DNA of hatred, who sits with the same DNA of undermining, and ask us now to reconsider and give him power back to abuse, to undermine, and the status quo is going to be the same. And this notion, maybe in closing, that says the white elite are afraid to invest back, or do not have control of their political say in the country. They hold the major political say because they hold the resources. Political power is nothing without resources. They control policy, they control development. So I am saying with humble respect to you, Mr. Mbeki, that I'm not sure even I can convince my kid at any stage any given stage to vote for any other party except the party that has, at least with their thieves, been there, managed to neutralize the situation, but has no hate. And the biggest mistake, maybe in my understanding or in my little knowledge, the biggest problem that the ANC made was to be very accommodative of everybody, including thieves. Thank you.
I think what we can do now, we have said mouthful. As well, I would like the ANC to respond, as well as the action essay, because now there are very important questions that were raised, and this question indeed define where we are as a country, We are in a scary state, and we need to find answers before all of us, we perish. And so let's have some of those answers from Moeletsi Mbeki.
Sorry. Okay. Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for the questions. What I sense is that there is the issue of land ownership in South Africa, which keeps cropping up in various forms. We heard about the title deeds, which was the issue that you raised. The other speaker had his land expropriation, his people's land expropriated to build Hillcrest Golf Estate. And somebody else to give political power back to the white elite. Well, I never said that, but anyway. Well, let me just touch on the question of land, because it appears in so many different forums. The question of land distribution in South Africa and land reform in South Africa. First, the land was conquered from the indigenous African population by the colonists from Europe. Nobody disputes that. That is one aspect of the land. It's part of our history. Now, what you do with that fact, if you have the gun and the muscle, you can conquer it back if that's what you want to do. You want to open another war to conquer that land back from the present owners. Well, that's scenario number one. However, the population of South Africa, 68% of our population lives in urban areas. They need to be fed by somebody else. They cannot grow their own food. So somebody has to grow the food. Today, the existing farmers feed the 68% of us who do not grow food. So we have to distinguish. We are no longer in the old tribal societies. We are in a modern capitalist society. In a modern capitalist society, we live in an urban environment. And in the urban environment, you don't grow your own food. Whether you are an English person, an American person. You know, in America, only 3% of the workers and the owners own land. 3%. In England, it's even less. In England, it's more like 1% of the population owns land. Now, if you want a modern, developed economy, you have to accept that farming is a very specialized industry that requires specialized people to manage it. Now, we can sit here and cry about our history for as long as we like. I can cry about my ancestral land. I don't think if I've ever told my friend Kolani what happened to my ancestral land. My ancestors used to live at a place in KZN called Bergville. That was many centuries ago. And if you go there, you find people called Dlamini and whatever. That's where my ancestors came from. And then in came King Shaka, and he was building his empire with his army. And the leader of my ancestral community in Bergville didn't want to join his empire. So he put them to the spear. So they ran away and ended up in the Eastern Cape. So now, what do you want me to do? Should I come back to Bergville? I don't know who owns the land now in Bergville. and say to the people who are living there, oh, Moeletsi Mbeki now wants his land back from you. Of course not. So we have a certain reality about South Africa that we have to live with. If we take the land from the present commercial farmer and give it to my brother's family there, they can't produce to feed the population in Durban. They haven't got the capital, they haven't got the skills, they haven't got all the things that you need to be able to run a productive commercial farm in South Africa today. That is the reality we have to live with. You know, a few months ago, I was reading a biography, an obituary, in an English newspaper, of a man called the Duke of Westminster in England. So this man died. He used to be a general in the British Army, and so they are writing an obituary about him. It turned out that this man was a general sent by the Norman invaders of England in 1066. He was sent to go and conquer part of England where London is today. So for conquering that part, his commander, who was called William the Conqueror, gave him part of that land and said, that's your family land, and all the villagers who live there are your people, and so on. This is the Duke of Westminster. Today, 1,000 years later, he still owns the land in London. The west of London, where Oxford Street is and so on, they are still paying rent to the Duke of Westminster. As it happens, the American embassy used to be on the land of the Duke of Westminster, and they had to pay rent to the Duke. So the Americans got fed up of forever paying rent for this embassy to the Duke of Westminster. And they said that you have to sell this land to us. We are no more interested in. So the Duke of Westminster said, oh, by the way, I used to own where New Orleans is, the land in America. So if you give me New Orleans, my land back in New Orleans, maybe I might think about selling you the plot of land where your embassy is sitting. So that is the reality of our situation. The challenge we have in South Africa, or the reality we have in South Africa. South Africa's agriculture feeds its population, it feeds its urban population, and most importantly, it exports. I pointed out that 60% of our exports come from mining, but another 15% comes from agriculture. Now, that is the reality of our economy. If we want to be a player in the modern world, we have to export, and those industries, as they are structured today, are what are keeping this country, giving it a potential of catching up with South Korea. So that is the reality of the situation. No, I don't agree about the issue of the dictator. The people of we have been living, the National Party came into power in 1924. And before then, there was Louis Botha's party and there was Jan Smuts' party. Those were dictatorships. Most of the people of this country didn't have a vote. They were dictated to. The National Party was in power from 1924 to 1994. It was a dictatorship. What did we get from that dictatorship? We got Bantu education. We got a huge disease load over the great majority of the South African population. The answer is South Africans will never accept another dictatorship. Whatever promise it makes, they will never accept a dictatorship. They fought for the democracy that we have today, and they're going to keep it. Now, we have to use that democracy to bring about the changes that we want to come about, but we have to use democracy. Dictatorship is not a solution. The question of title deeds in this country is actually not is only marginally an economic question. It's a power question. The ruling political elite does not want the people of South Africa to challenge them, especially the poor black South Africans. I was asked 2-3 years ago by King Zwelithini, the late His Majesty King Zwelithini. He asked me to help to rehabilitate an irrigation project at Nongoma. There's an irrigation scheme there that is not working. So he asked if I could help to rehabilitate this irrigation scheme. Although I'm not a farmer, I put together a team of farm experts from Gauteng, including commercial farmers who were doing irrigated agriculture in Krugersdorp. So we had a team of about 5 people who worked on what should be done to rehabilitate this scheme in Nongoma. And this is serving the villagers in that community. As I'm talking to you, that project has been killed. And who killed the project? It was killed by Ingonyama Trust and the board of Ingonyama Trust, including the KZN provincial government. They killed the project. They told us when we were ready to implement the improvements that the king had no authority to commission us to improve the irrigation scheme. It doesn't belong to him. It belongs to Ingonyama Trust, and Ingonyama Trust has never asked us to do anything, and they will think about it. 3-4 years later, they're still thinking about it. So it's very clear the existing powers that be in South Africa don't want the population of South Africa to improve. That is the reality. And that's why I can say to you, that's what happened with the irrigation scheme. That they even went to the king himself and they told him that he must stop what he's doing. Well, one of the things we have to realize, apartheid will never come back in South Africa. So the notion that white people want apartheid back is totally not true. First, not all white people in South Africa, even during the era of apartheid, supported apartheid. Huge part of the white population did not support apartheid. I had good relations with the late Pik Botha. And I once asked Pik Botha, why did the National Party, which was in a very strong position, negotiate when it negotiated? He told me the reason, in their calculation, they had estimated that they had enough military strength as the National Party regime to suppress the black protest for another 10 years. He said they had enough military capability. And I know they had, we all know they even had nuclear bombs. So they had the capability. But he said, what we most feared was what the sanctions would do, the economic sanctions by the Americans and the outside world. He said the whites in South Africa were not prepared to accept their living standard to be destroyed in order to defend apartheid. He said that was more our immediate threat. Because if the economy got destroyed by the sanctions, the whites would rise up against National Party rule and fight against the National Party rule. So we have to get it out of our minds that whites in South Africa want apartheid back. They had their own problems also with apartheid. And apartheid will never come back to South Africa. Now, how do we as South African citizens work together to solve our problems? That, to me, is the question. And this is a total red herring that, that there is apartheid waiting in the wings. The DA is a middle-class party, like the ANC is a middle-class party, like my friends Action SA are a middle-class party. Doesn't matter whether you're white or black, but they're a middle-class party, and they defend the interests of the middle classes. That's why they are all sitting in parliament, but our economy is in tatters, is sitting with unemployment, but they're doing nothing about it. They haven't changed the structure of the economy. They haven't come up with a strategy for overcoming the 40% unemployment that we are sitting with in this country. So the middle class parties are not, of course they have a right to exist, that's why we have a democracy. But all I'm saying is that we also need a capitalist party or capitalist parties. And capitalist parties is not the same as apartheid. And we have to learn that apartheid and the capital is not the same thing. Have I answered all the questions? No, there was a question about the ANC is too accommodating. I didn't quite understand the question there. Maybe you can repeat.
I think he was trying to say during the negotiations, the ANC compromised a lot.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Oh, well, everybody compromised during the negotiations. And you have to put yourself in where South Africa was in 1990 or from the late 80s onwards. South Africa was on the verge of a bloodbath. Nobody was going to win because we, the African population and the colored population who were leading the armed struggle, we didn't have enough power, military strength, to defeat the military strength of the National Party. Now, the fact that we could mobilize our friends like the Americans to sanction the economy, it activated the white population against the National Party. And that was one of the things that the National Party feared that drove them to the negotiating table. So there had to be accommodation, obviously. But the first accommodation was actually made before that. It was made between the ANC and Gavin Reilly and his delegation from Anglo-American in 1985, which was that the ANC is not a socialist party. It is not interested in expropriating the assets of the existing owners of the South African economy. And Mandela said this over and over again. What the ANC was interested in was that if the black people wanted to be capitalists, there should be no racial laws that stop them from becoming capitalists. And this was settled between the ANC and Anglo-American in 1985 when Gavin Reilly led a delegation to go and meet with the ANC in 1985, that there was no going to be any expropriation, not going to be any nationalization. Even the so-called expropriation that we're seeing from Mandela's successors, this is all posturing. They haven't got the guts to do it. They think it will win them the election. But but Trump has called their bluff now. We saw them shivering in front of Trump in the White House. So that's what happens when you bluff. You have to be honest, believe me. Thank you.
Okay. I would like to do this before we close. No, sorry? No, you have... Oh, the education question.
What did I... Which one? Sorry.
You were saying other countries are advancing because they invest in skills, in education. But us, we are not.
Well, as I pointed out, you know, the present rulers of South Africa have a vested interest in perpetuating the poverty of the mass of the people of this country. And I gave you the example of what happened with King Zwelithini's project to improve an irrigation scheme. It's the same with the education of South Africa. We have the management of our education system is a complete mess of our public education system. We have a very good, world-class private education system in South Africa. If you go up to Maritzburg, you see the private schools out there. We have top, world-class schools. I met a family once in South Korea. This family was emigrating to South Africa. So I was absolutely shocked. And I asked them, how could you... We have so much crime, we have all the things that our presidential delegation told Trump we have. There was one lady there who said we cut each other's throats. So I said to this Korean family, how could you be migrating to a country like South Africa? So they told me that South Africa, they did a calculation. They surveyed the whole world. They said the education system in South Korea is so pressurized. Children are committing suicide. It's so competitive. They don't want to put their children through that. So I said, and then South Africa? So they said, we researched the education system of South Africa. They said, the private schools in South Africa are amongst the best in the world. So they said, we're not worried. As for the crime, well, that's one of those things. So we have 2 or 3 systems of education in South Africa. If we can produce the top education system, which our private education system does produce, it means you can replicate. We have the skills, we have the people who know how to. It can be replicated in the public education sector. But the powers that be are not interested in replicating it in the public sector for the mass of the population.
Thanks. And so can I do this? I'll give, okay. Rogers, I'll give you 1 minute, no, not a minute, half a minute to ask a question. And also, I don't know, from ANC, they will make a choice. And then from Action SA, and then Ubaba Mbeki thereafter will close. Can we do that? Thanks. Because I know, Rogers, that there are people here who voted for you.
Thank you, X-Man. I'm actually not here to ask a question. I'm here to listen. I think often politicians talk too much and don't listen enough. So I'm here to listen. But I think the message I want to give out there is that if you look at the history of South Africa, we've been dominated by one party for too many years. Since last year, there's a whole new dynamic unfolding in the country. And if you believe in democracy, this is democracy at work. And I think it should encourage people. Moeletsi, you were talking earlier about those voters who have become disenfranchised and disinterested. This should start giving people some hope and some idea. The one area I do disagree with you is our current economic situation and the challenge we find ourselves in. It's the sins of our fathers that we are now dealing with. It's poor policy decisions. 600 billion rand that was spent on bailing out state-owned entities. This is the type of situation that we've inherited that we now need to deal with. 70 billion rand cut off our provincial equitable share over 4 years. But you now have a multi-party government in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, not a one-party dominant government. And it means there's more accountability. But you're never going to change the inherited system overnight. It's going to take time to turn it around. But I would suggest that we're in an exciting, a vibrant political situation with challenges. We understand those challenges. But we need to collectively start taking an active interest in politics and in political parties. Thanks.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's lovely to hear you, Rogers, understanding these challenges. We've been saying to you there are challenges in government for a while. It's good to finally hear you understand these challenges. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tulisa Ndlela. I just, Mr. Mbeki, wish to speak on two things. Number one, you reference the 1 trillion rand that private business holds in reserves. Now, that stats, Mr. Mbeki, is not from last year. That stats is from 2005 to 2014. The research was done by the University of Johannesburg, published 2017. So if as far back as 2005, there was 1.4 trillion, and I'm happy to share my sources with you. You can only imagine how much it is today. And here's the danger with this, ladies and gentlemen. This economy helps companies produce 1.4 trillion rands. And this amount of money is kept in reserve and not invested in this economy, against a backdrop of almost half, if not more, unemployed people. Meaning the sustainability of the economy where you are making money is not guaranteed. So as much as you are speaking about 70 million taken away from the equitable share, but that's because the pot is shrinking. The pot is shrinking because what is supposed to be reinvested into the economy is not. And the job of the government has never been, in a capitalist society, that of creating jobs. The role of the government is to create an enabling environment in a capitalist society. Whether I agree with it or not, that's different. But in a capitalist society, government creates the environment. And if people can keep 1.4 trillion rands in 2005, I'd say that environment is created. Because but for that environment, people will not have 1.4 trillion rands in reserves. Now, the second issue I want to speak about, Mr. Mbeki, is that it's true that the ANC in membership is dominated by black people. But I want to say this to you, to everyone who's here. The ANC is not a black party. There's never been, it's not going to be. So when you count black parties, don't count the ANC there. The ANC is an organization of everyone. We are a non-racial organization. None of the rhetoric of the ANC, none of the policy positions of the ANC has ever been about the ANC being a black party. So there's nothing in the ANC that speaks about we are a black party, black unity, and things like that. What the ANC says is that we are a party that is pro-poor, what we call the motive forces of the struggle. And at a later stage, maybe Olani, you would invite me to come and speak exactly on this issue of what the motive forces are. So it's important for everyone in this room not to assume that we're a black party. My last point is on education. I also disagree with you when you say the ANC over the 30 years has had an investment in making sure that people are less educated. Because the numbers don't say so. The number of people in this country, particularly those from a disadvantaged background, who have achieved post-matric qualifications, they stand for themselves. Now, yes, my sister, without opening a dialogue, it's true, they are unemployed. But where you are, Stats SA says, of those with post-matric qualification, the number of people who are employed is far greater than those without. What you have as a challenge in South Africa is that not enough have post-matric qualification, but the unemployed rate in graduates is far less. And I'm not saying it's perfect, but I'm saying it's far less. It could be better if that 1.4 trillion of 2005 could be unlocked and reinvested in the economy and not kept in reserves. Because if you do that, you are going to create 2021 again, and I'm not sure whether this time you'll be ready to deal with what 2021 brought to us in July, when this number of people continue to be unemployed in an economy that relies in getting as many people employed as possible. Thank you.
You know, there's something that is very interesting. If you don't do this, this is what is going to happen. But anyway, I don't want to bash anyone. Where's Mwa?
Oh, what's on control? No, thanks, Kolane, and evening, everyone. And thanks, Tata Mbeki, for your analysis. And we really appreciate. I was not going to speak, but I'm interested to hear your views, especially around what you said about people not now interested in voting in the main. And I hear the tone about the new government of GNU, whether do you believe will excite people to go back and vote? Why I'm asking this question is, from where I'm sitting, I of the view that says not much is changing. I want to ask if you see any changes, because if you look at currently, we just heard today about 200 million rand spent on travel expenses for ministers and deputy ministers. And the cabinet still bloated, despite that those in GNU who have been opposing to the ANC are now part of the GNU and now okay with this big cabinet and deputy ministers, and no one is raising issues about that, and they are fine with that. Then, on your analysis, you spoke about black elite, which is political elite, and you spoke about business elite. I'm interested to understand why the political elite will have a race, which I understand why, what you mean, but the capital elite and business elite, you don't refer to race on it. Because in truly speaking, we all know that the capital or business elite is mainly white. But when you speak or when you present, you separate the political elite and refer to it as a black elite, but don't refer the business elite as a white elite. I don't understand why it will be that. And also want to get your view. I didn't hear exactly what you suggest. You talk about property ownership, which is true predominantly within the hands of minority whites, which is a reality. But you are talking as if power, political power, if it can go back to those owning property, will have a better government or the country will be better. Are you then suggesting that if if power can go to the hands of white people, we have a better country? Or you are saying if black people can own land, we'll govern better? Or you are saying if they can own properties and means of production, we'll govern better? Or you're just saying merely a white person will govern better than a black person? And lastly, what is your view about a government celebrating 0.1% GDP growth?
I'm Kukungobo. We've been ANC all our lives, and we're hopeful to have best out of it taking over. Babu Mbeki, it is heartbreaking to know that as a country we are sitting at 50% unemployment. People who are below 35 years. That to me is scaring me to the bones. And I'm trying to understand what is it that is making our government unable to create environment that will give opportunities to employment. What is holding us to industrialize? We come from an era where there were East Coasts and rainbows and what do we need as a government to create jobs for our children? During our days in the 60s and 70s, none of us went working. I don't know how apartheid balanced it. It was a winner to pass JC. We have a lot of my age that didn't go through Standard 6. But they were all employed. They were all employed, earning that little, but they were earning. We are now faced with a scenario. My firstborn child passed or graduated or was born in 80. So all children that are born from 1980 to the 2Ks, almost 70% of them are unemployed, learned as they are, with degrees and diplomas and all qualifications that we have achieved over 30 years. But why is it that they're unemployed? Those that have qualified as teachers are unemployed. Instead, they are assistant teachers that are given 6 months or a year at the expense of those that are qualified. In the hospitals, there are nurses that are no longer training within the hospital environment, but they're training privately, but hospitals cannot absorb them. I'm trying to understand where did we lose it to ensure that those that are qualified are working. It's too technical, Babu Mbeki, for me to understand your analysis of the elite, capital elite, business elite coming together and forming a government. It's too much for me to absorb and unpack. I'm trying to understand the business people and the politicians, what is making us fail to create a working environment for our people, who will then be taxed to address the GDP that Mbeki you are talking about. What made people to go? There was something that was called Kwatepa. Those that couldn't make up to Standard 2, somehow were taken by Kwatepa and they worked. We were like headhunted to go and teach. What has happened that has changed that? And what hurts most is that the number of people that are unemployed, learned as they are, have been reduced to inhuman products of human beings. They've been reduced to drug addicts, to a lot of crime that is out there because they've been waiting. A child with BSc has waited from 2005 to be employed, but is not getting anywhere. So that has made that child to change. Where is it that, talking to the politicians that are here, I'm not talking of the competition that you guys are having and defending, why are we unable to address the 50% of unemployment rate that was reflected there so that we see the GDP going up? Where did we lose it? Why, when we are more educated, we are less employed, or we are more unemployable? Something has to talk somewhere. As a nation, I'm not directing only to the government, something has to talk to each other to ensure that we address the unemployment rate. But finally, Babu Mbeki, you said in South Korea, human capital has gone up, which means there is something that they've done with their education. But I'm finding a contradiction if they then prefer education in South Africa, seeing it better, when our own education is not talking to our economy. So somehow that is confusing me. I want to see a situation where we invest in human capital so that we perform like South Korea and all others, because somewhere, somehow, there is something wrong with our education system, yet we are educated. I don't know whether...
Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Manana Nhlanhla. I just want to answer some of your concerns. And there's this big elephant in the room which we are not addressing, which is corruption. And the reason why we've got a failed state, it's not because of the ANC. Is the partnership between the ANC and the white capital. There is no way you can have corruption in government without the participation of business. It's impossible. So it is important that corruption doesn't trap us as a nation, because you've got corruption in banks, in auditing firms, in the judiciary, everywhere in South Africa, there's corruption. So if government wants to be corrupt, it needs a partner. And that partner is who? And somehow that has never been brought to the surface. It's always the ANC is corrupt. It needs a partner to be corrupt. So if people are able to buy Ferraris with 5 million rands of cash, who provides that cash? It's the bank. And what does the bank say about that? You know? So when it comes to the government trying to bring about any correction in terms of whatever black empowerment or black business, remember the Isibaya Fund by the PIC? When you look at every government solution, there is corruption in it. This is why it collapses. So you find that some things are overfunded or are front-loaded so that whoever applies for that funding cannot afford to pay back that because there are kickbacks. So if you go to the PIC and you go and make a loan from the PIC, then you need to have partners within the PIC itself that you've got to pay. And this is what is creating this whole collapse of whatever solution in inverted commas, that government wants to bring to the fore. Even when it came to the farmers, when government was trying to provide funding to buy farms for black people. For my sins, when I was younger, I was chairperson of the Untitled Development Corporation. There were so many farms that were bought from white farmers, and the corruption was between who? Government, the white farmer, and the purchaser. And that's why it collapsed. A farm that was supposed to be 10 million was 20, and the 10 was split between the three parties. And 69 billion, if I'm not mistaken, has been spent by government trying to acquire farms from white farmers. And all those farms have collapsed. And who has become rich? The white farmers. And what happens? They buy them back because they've collapsed. And the government wasn't there even to monitor whether after the farm was purchased, was the equipment there, was the skills transfer, which was part of the agreement, did it happen? No, it didn't. So if we all as South Africans, both black and white, can stay away from corruption, because we seem to have embraced corruption as a nation. Let us be honest. It's not a black problem. It's not an ANC problem. It's the South African problem. Thank you.
Can I do this? Sorry, sir. Sorry. It's going to. It's a burning question. I don't want to be seen as a racist here. Seriously.
It won't only be racist, it will be cultural as well. Mr. Mbeki, my name is Henny Stander. I always tell my friends I'm just a dumb Dutchman. And for the sake of the audience, I'll speak English. It's amazing that this evening we still talk about apartheid. We still talk about black and white. We are all South Africans. The lady at the back talked about education failed. I think if you look at our universities, we used to be rated, 12 of our universities was rated in the top 200 in the world. We've now dropped one out. I think it's one of the DUT universities dropped out now. However, it's not the university and the degrees. How many doctors are walking the streets today? No jobs. How many law students could be lawyers walking the streets? How many of our kids here have we lost to the world? Left South Africa, gone to Australia, gone to the UK, gone to America, wherever they went to. Because there's opportunities for them, there's no opportunities here. I think we need to do an introspection to ourselves. Most of us tonight spoke as politicians. I'm a South African. I'm not a Burki, I'm not a white man. For me, I'm a South African. Yes, the gentleman who said we expropriated his Hillcrest land. I live in Cotswold because this is where I want to be. This is the lifestyle I want to have. And there's lots of us. In our community, we got Indians, we got blacks, we got doctors, we got lawyers. We're all friends here. There's no color for us. So I think it's time that us as South Africans forget about there's a political landscape, we understand that. There's the financial landscape, I understand that. But we need to get together as South Africans. Forget about ANC, forget about DA, forget about IFP, whoever that is. Are we there for ourselves? Are we there for our own game? Or are we there for the 1.2 million rand that I'm going to earn when I sit in Parliament at the end of the month or end of the year? what about my colleagues? What about my fellow South Africans? Thank you, Mr. Mbeki.
Thanks. Can we do this, ne? Babu Mbeki, I'll give you only 5 minutes to answer these questions, and then after that, so that people can have something to eat before they go home. Yes.
Hi, everyone. There's also another elephant in the room that we're not addressing. Besides corruption, is the rampant problem of illegal foreigners in this country. Unfortunately, we have white capital, if I could say that, or business elite that are exploiting these people. These people are coming because they are told that South Africans, young black South Africans, are lazy, they don't want to work. Right now, there's videos trending of Zimbabweans in farms that is owned by white people. They are working there. They are treated well. Obviously, they're not going to pay tax. They're not going to contribute to the economy because they have to be kept a secret. Some of them by our own brothers in the government. Unfortunately, we are dealing with the Department of Higher Education. Ashley Souls is busy grilling multiple universities. Why are you hiring foreigners over South Africans? We, on social media, we are fighting white people. Yay, I couldn't get this job because BE. And then I come as a black person, I'm like, no, but I've graduated. I myself, I have a degree in supply chain management. I don't have a job. A white person is going to tell me that I couldn't get that job because they were looking for a black person. Who is that black person that is going to fill that space? It's a Zimbabwean. Because a Zimbabwean, or sorry to mention nationalities, they can afford to take 5,000 and live in a swamped place or wherever they are living, like rats in this country. We, as South Africa, we are sitting as tier 2 in the whole world of human trafficked people. We are always seeing in the news Somalians coming here. What are they doing? I'm from a movement, it's called Progressive Forces of South Africa. We are dealing with basically holding the government accountable. We are seeing this. They go to workplaces, they get them, they find 300 foreigners. You try to get them removed, they come back, labor inspectors, they'll collect a brown envelope. So there is no ways this problem of 50%, 60% young people is going to be solved. Right now, we are seeing also a case where our constitution is being abused against us as people, as South African citizens. Our health system is failing, it feels systematic. Our police, they cannot work because they are overwhelmed by uncontrolled migration. Every single department in this country is overwhelmed by uncontrolled migration. What are we doing about the border? There is nothing we're doing. We're going to say constitution, we are being praised for being the world's best constitution, but what does it mean when we're sitting with this problem? It means nothing. In fact, I want to say it means focal, really. So, yeah, it's so sad that I was in an Uber, this Ugandan man told me how this white people, they helped him and they were able to claim for him 8 million rand from RAF. They got a share. The problem is it's corruption, it's uncontrolled migration, and it's the inability of those in governments to prioritize South Africans. Thank you.
No more hand, I'm blind now. And so can we stay for 5 minutes? It's concluding. And then,
Okay.
Yeah, only 5 minutes, bro.
Yeah.
Summarize.
I've got my covered here. Polani, I think there were a number of comments which I don't really think I have to go over. there was a comment about the good works that the ANC has done, and I don't think that needs me to comment on it. Why the people, will the government of national unity encourage more people to vote? I hope so, but if there is no change to our levels of unemployment, to our levels of poverty, whatever the government of national unity is called, it will not change anything. And from what I have seen about the government of national unity, I actually call the government of national unity the ANC in drag, because most of the ANC's policies are in place, and they are continuing. The other political parties, DA and Rise Mzansi, and all of them are playing on the margins of the game. One of the central problems South Africa has in our policy system is black economic empowerment. I said I wasn't going to argue with the politician. To say the ANC is not a black party, and then the central, most important policy of the ANC is black economic empowerment. What is black economic empowerment? It's exclusion of whites, it's exclusion of Indians, it's exclusion of colors. Who votes for the ANC? In the last election, 98.5% of the people who voted for the ANC were Africans. So you can't turn around and say, no, this is semantics. This is playing with words. And I don't think we're here to play with words. If you want to play with words, great. You Scrabble. That's where I suggest you should go to. Then you go there and play with words. Corruption is a huge problem in our country. It's a mega problem, and it is very destructive. It destroys so many things. It's a game any number can play, and I agree the private sector is guilty, but at the end of the day, if you are the government of South Africa, that's where the moral responsibility sits. You can't absolve yourself and bouncing it around and say somebody else is responsible. If you are the government of South Africa, you are elected by the people to make sure the rule of law is maintained, and that corruption is overcome. So we can't blame the private sector. At the end of the day, it's the responsibility of the elected government to make sure rule of law is implemented in the country, immigration is controlled. I have raised this many, many times about controlling of our borders. What has the ANC government done? It has destroyed the military. We saw our military being humiliated by rebels in Eastern DRC, being killed in Eastern. Why? Because the government is not prepared to train them properly, to arm them properly, to equip them properly. We have one of the most important attack helicopters, which is the Rooivalk in South Africa. We send troops to Eastern Congo without attack helicopter protection. Why? Because we are not prepared to spend money to maintain the Rooivalk. So you cannot get away. If you want to be the government, then you have to govern. If you want to retire and sit at the beach at Umhlanga and get E. coli, then go and I agree completely with the problem of unemployment. But you know, Korea, I was talking to the Korean ambassador a few days ago. We were together at a function it was called Europe Day. The Korean ambassador told me there are 5,000 graduates from South Africa teaching English in Korea. They are investing in raising the level of English in the Korean population. And who are they using? They are using South Africa to develop their human skills, who we are living unemployed in South Africa. So the responsibility of the government of South Africa cannot be minimized. We educate young people, and we are not making sure that they have. The government controls public education. It has the responsibility to make public education work. It can't run away and say, it's not my job as a government to provide jobs. It is your job to provide jobs for the educators, so that instead of them having to be employed in Korea, they are employed in South Africa to raise our human capital. We have seen where we are sitting with human capital. We are sending our graduates to go and build the human capital of Korea. Korea is number 4 in the world in terms of its human capital index. And we are strengthening, taking our skilled people from South Africa and going to strengthen the human capital index of Korea. So, in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, we have mismanaged this country for most of the last 30 years. We can't get away from it, and the ANC can't get away from that responsibility, but all of us have to participate to find a new solution to ANC governance. Thank you.
Sorry, before you sit. Sorry, before you sit, because, you know, I always say maybe we have about 5 years before we close the chapter about South Africa. You know, the most urgent thing, if you speak to the citizens, what is it that we need to do right now? If we live here and we converge again, what is it that we need to do?
Well, a point was made. We have to vote. This is the single most important. I'm not saying who you should vote for, but we have to participate in the elections. That's point number 1. Point number 2, we have to create new parties that are capable of solving our economic problem. It's no use going around in circles and say, we took part in liberating this country. We all took part in liberating this country. But today is another era. We are in another time. We are not fighting a liberation struggle. We are fighting to get the development of the population of South Africa and all the people of South Africa, not the inner circle of the black economic empowerment elite. We want the development of all the population so that our country is competitive and we are not having soldiers killed by ragtag rebels in the Eastern DRC because they don't have the equipment, they are not properly trained, they are too old. You know, the average age of a South African soldier is 42 years old. The average age of an American soldier is 19 years old. So, when you talk about mismanagement of the country, frankly, the ANC wrote the book about mismanagement of the country. Thank you.
Thanks, Tabane. Sorry, Tabane would like to say some few words to Babu Mbeki, and then after that, there are some refreshments. I don't know, is still appropriate language to say refreshments at this time, but we do have it.
Thank you. I've been asked to offer a vote of thanks to you, Babu Mbeki. Thank you very much for an intriguing conversation that you had with us. I believe if you could accept that we go back to the conversation that was proposed by our government of a national dialogue. As a country, I think we have quite a lot to talk about. and that's across races. I'll just try and summarize some of the topics that you touched on in your talk, at least in my own interpretation. I think South Africa is a nation that is born with very deep intrinsic fears across races, quite honestly. Somebody spoke about the holding of reserves. I think it's born of fear. The black population of our country is born of fear. I think we need a dialogue as a society to say, how can we trust one another? How can we learn to live with one another? How can we find solutions for ourselves as a society? And how can we breach this very huge breach that is between us, particularly as races, because I don't think we can run away from the fact that we don't trust one another as races, and we need to have that level of trust among each other. Number two is, how can we draw a future for ourselves and for our children going forward? What does the future of South Africa look like? And how can that future be manufactured by us so that the next generation can benefit from us? You know, when you spoke about your Korea, your Singapores, etc., I was quite intrigued because I think it took a generation that said, we are not going to do this for ourselves, but we're going to do it for the next generations to come. And they started planting the seed so that other generations can benefit from that. Can we do that as a society? How can we create a politician that is interested in us as South Africa? You said we must vote. And I think I agree with that concept that we must vote. But the truth is, who do we vote for? Because we have lost trust in our politicians and we don't think they mean well for us. How can we raise the stature of a politician, of a South African politician that will be interested in us, that will be interested in our lot, and that will be interested in uniting us as a society, and that will be interested in driving the future of South Africa to a desired outcome? How can we deal with the problem of education? That is a serious plague in our country. Lots of educated graduates, no employment. I believe it's in the education and not so much in the employment. But I don't know. That needs a national dialogue that we need to have as a society. And how can we deal with the issue of ethics and morality that Uma spoke about? We are slowly degenerating into a hugely unethical and immoral society. In business, in society, crime-ridden, the way people drive in the roads, etc., etc. We're just degenerating as a society. And how can we bring back the ethics and morality into South Africa? I think it needs a national dialogue, and I think if you could drive that national dialogue for us, we'd be hugely indebted to you. With just those few words, as I've been asked, thank you very much for visiting us in KZN, and thank you very much for offering your insight.
Thanks a lot. I think we are done. And my number, please don't flat to me right now because I know you want to pay your sins. Give Caesar what belongs to Caesar. But what you can do, just give me a call or send me an email. And then we can talk in that email because I don't want to do money laundering right now. You know, I might be arrested. But if you are willing, I'll be here and then we can negotiate separately. Babumpek, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Angbong, we have something outside. Thanks.
Good. Was that okay?
No, it was best. It was the best.
Thank you very much for your for your talk, sir.
Okay, thanks for coming.
And staying up and giving us everything.
Thanks for coming.
Fulani.
Thank you.
I'll see you
Thank you.
on the
Pleasure. Thank you. Very nice to meet you.
I couldn't